Wow, I didn't know all this, and I want to make sure I don't yeah, because I know you from what I know you as, and then reading your bio was like, oh, it really hit
Wow,
me.
I didn't know all this.
So let me go ahead and introduce you. I'll start recording and then we'll do this because we are live streaming because that's fun too.
All right.
And I'll record there. Okay, so welcome to Lead Stronger Longer. It's the podcast that empowers you to purposefully lead your life personally and professionally. So, in today's episode, as you can see, I have a special guest, and Robert DeLude is here. And I'm going to share this bio, and I'm going to do my best to stay unattached emotionally because I know this amazing man, and I didn't know this about him until I read his bio. It's shortened it a little bit, but here we go. He's a dedicated recovery advocate, celebrating over 5 years of sobriety. His journey from severe life challenges, including homelessness in the streets of Las Vegas and a life-threatening overdose, to resilience and transformation, inspires so many, including me. He's affectionately known as the podcast dude. He is the original host of the None of Your Business podcast. He's been collaborating with influential figures and speaking at major podcast conventions for years now. He focuses his attention now on his groundbreaking venture, Second Option. It's a group recovery coaching community, and Robert continues his commitment to helping others find their path to recovery outside traditional models. I am so honored to have you today on my podcast. Thank you for being here. Let's talk.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I thank you so much for having me. I love this. Yeah.
So I like starting off with your favorite quote or mantra, something maybe that is a guiding motto for you.
Yeah. Something two come to mind. One, everything you want is on the other side of fear. And then just persistence. So for me, I lived my life in fear of everything. Uh, like fear of like not being able to fit in, fear of even passing a math test or going to school, fear of starting a podcast, fear of just starting anything, fear of going to the gym because, like, oh, that guy's going to the gym. How dare he? So, having been able to step into that fear and getting a life that I cannot even like fathom, like, that's um kind of what I live my life by. And then just keep like persistent, just keep trying. Like even if you fail, just try it at it again.
It's so fascinating to me because I think anyone who has met you without knowing your history would never imagine that you have any kind of fear or back off in pursuing your goals and persisting. And there has to be something significant that shifted in you that made it be like, that's it. I'm gonna walk through the proverbial fire and I'm going to face this down and do what I'm here to do. Just right off, I can think of when you went and said, I'm going to go and work with like Sean and Lacey, they're you work with them and what that took. I mean, that had to have been, that's like way outside anyone's normal comfort zone of going through and facing a fear. So, what did you like? What was an early crucial pivot for you that led to this kind of breakthrough?
Yeah. So I overdosed in 2019. No, 2018, my bad. Almost 6 years ago. I woke up in the hospital after being homeless in Las Vegas. And like I remember laying in the hospital bed, like 4 days, like I was there unconscious, and my like I finally woke up. My family was like crying. They thought I died, whatever. And like laying there, I was like, I need to get my crap together. Like I can't keep doing this stuff. Um, like I had sobriety for, a few years and then I relapsed and just kept going through that lifestyle. So when that moment happened, like there was this podcast that I would listen to, the School of Greatness podcast by Lewis Howes. And my fiance at the time, she would leave, probably go hang out with another guy, whatever. And I would go walk down to this McDonald's to use their free Wi-Fi and get a glass of water because the summertime in Las Vegas, it's pretty hot. So, I would go use the free Wi-Fi and listen to the School of Greatness podcast, just looking for hope, inspiration, something like that. And I, early on, like I was a big fan of Gary Vee. Like I still am, but I was a really, really big fan of him. So I was like, okay, how can I do what Gary Vee is doing? How can I do what Lewis Howes is doing, but like in my own niche? Um, I- like we all go through struggles. It doesn't matter what our background is, but we can overcome them. And my struggle of me overdosing and ending up in the ICU, that's like a big struggle for me. And somebody who maybe something not as significant is a big struggle to them. Just because I almost died doesn't mean mine is any bigger or less to you because we all have different experiences. So, anyways, when I first started my podcast, like I would buy all the stuff, I'd do all the things, I would drive in the woods in middle of Montana to record an episode, and every time I would play it back, I would get fearful and I'd throw it away, and like just so much fear of starting something because I always cared about what other people thought of me, and that always got me in a negative spot. Like people, like I got bullied growing up. So when I started using and selling drugs, like all of a sudden I had friends. All of a sudden, oh, I was always afraid to talk to people, like deathly afraid of talking to people. I remember I used to be a janitor, and like if somebody like go clean a state building, and if somebody was in their office like after 5 and I had to say hello to them while grabbing their trash can, I would have a panic attack and I would faint in their office. So being able to step out of that and seeing what can happen when you get to the other side of fear is amazing. Like I know that like it's only temporary. I just keep pushing, and through persistence of keep doing that, like I get a life that like the life that I'm living right now, like I would have never thought like possible, like especially where I was, 5.5 years ago, like that. Like it blows my mind. Like some days I wake up and I'm like, am I living in a movie? Like so
Yeah, this is really interesting, and I appreciate you being, open, transparent, vulnerable, and sharing these pieces of your life, because I think that we can all get siloed in our own idea of, oh, well, they don't have the same fear, or they don't understand what I've been through, and then we can kind of justify why we keep holding on to our fear, because it's really a belief, right? It's a belief that's um, at one point had served us. I do believe that. I do believe that we pick up things that either we learn from the people that are caregiving to us as we're going through those first years, and that's really just kind of our early childhood programming, that then we operate from that. But without unpacking every little detail of your story, I think that it's interesting to look back, because I happen to also know Og Mandino had you probably know Og, right? Greatest salesman in the world.
oh, okay.
He wrote, I mean, it's millions and millions of copies of The Greatest Salesman in the World in these series. And he was on his last of last, like going into a pawn shop to buy a gun, to basically like, I'm done, and
Oh,
lost his wife, alcoholic, all this. And this is where he went in. It was raining, the pawn shop was closed, and he went into a library and he started to read all of like what you're saying with Lewis and these podcasts that are inspiring and that give us hope. And he basically got that from the library and read some books on that, self-help and these pieces. And it's really significant how, and then he wrote the book, Greatest Salesman in the World. And I've read that and I read it every single year because it's so just principle based in that, and also knowing what he's gone through. And I think that that's what's so profound about you, is that now you do have these experiences that so many have had, and we don't talk about it. We have no clue what others have gone through, but you can now step into that place and be that humble servant in a way to share your gifts. And just as it's fascinating to me to know that that was your background, even just a few years ago, after meeting you in Dallas and spending time with you, and your enormous generosity and sense of giving and going all out and communicating with everyone. I mean, like, right? From, who was it? Bobby, the the MMA fighter, right? And you're just like
Oh
on it,
yeah.
talking to everybody, and just like, whoa, that's a complete 180.
Yeah.
And I would hope that it's not going to take us being on our deathbed to flip that switch. So what would you say is really some of those key points that you've learned and discovered now moving through this? Because it's probably a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, sometimes even decision to move forward in your life intentionally and face the fears. So what would you say are some of those guiding points that have really led you to step into this?
Um, having a higher power that I believe in, either whatever you want to call that. Um, and then just saying F it and go for it. To be honest, like just saying F it. Like for me, if I don't just say F it, I'm gonna do it, then I don't do it. So that's what I do. I pray, I meditate about something, and then if I still have that like, oh, it's okay, you don't deserve that, or you're not going to be able to do it, I say, you know what, F it, let's do it. Like, let's find out. Uh, and when I do that, I'm somebody, when you give me like to coach me or to guide me, like you have to be straightforward. Like, hey, Robert, you're effing around, like do that. So I have to talk to myself that way. And not saying I don't love myself, but going and just being direct, like, okay, F it. Like, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? End up in the hospital again? Okay, well, if that's the worst thing that's gonna happen, then for trying something and maybe getting embarrassed or maybe failing, then it's gonna be okay. Um, like I know that I still have a lot of work to do and a lot of growth to go, but just being able to step into it and saying F it, and like I'm not gonna say it's like easy. Like when I was driving out here last summer, um, about maybe halfway through, I was like, this was a terrible decision. Why did I do this? Like this was so dumb. Um, and then I just like, F it. I'm already here. So that just keep going forward no matter what. You're gonna have fear, you're gonna have doubt. Having a tribe or a circle of trust that, like, I don't call friends friends, I call friends family. So if I need to call them so they can tell me, hey, keep going or whatever, then do it. The people who co-sign my BS that want to be enablers or whatever, like I cut them out of my life because they do no good for me. So I would say F it, higher power, and having people in your life that won't that will call you out on your bullshit.
Yeah, so that's a big jump. I mean, you literally jumped from, in that 5.5 year span of time, significant shift. And I'm just curious as to some of the tools. So you're listening to Lewis Howes, so you got some tools from that. But how have you been able to differentiate those voices, right? Because you're still you,
Yeah.
but now you're hearing the voices differently, and now you're able to separate those out and say, Whereas someone on the other side of that may not be able to, and they're still in their head leading a life of, no, I've got to keep this. And this can be anyone, because I've worked with high level celebrities and executives that are basically, one moment away from being in the ICU and being in that situation. But there is something within, and it could be that higher power, but that's just like that shift that happens. Can you give us any insight on that moment that really helped you differentiate, like outside of that first moment of laying in the hospital? I mean, that's, yes, I get that, but then there's really the hill to climb, right? Because you're at like square
Yeah.
zero, and
Yeah.
then there's the hill to climb. So what? Uh, Maybe you can share some insight on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely. So it wasn't like, like 2 o'clock, I was struggling with this, and then 2:01, I'm not. If it was for me, like it might happen to some people, but for me, it's not. It was really looking at my life and saying, okay, what worked in the past and what hasn't worked. And really like doing an inventory of my behaviors, my emotions, my friend, just my entire life, just like a business owner does on their business, like doing that on my life on all aspects and cutting out what worked and what didn't, going to therapy. I used to talk smack about people going to therapy. Like, um, yeah, just don't know why I did that, but I would do it. And then I started going and I started learning different coping mechanisms and the thought process and just being around people who are on the same journey as me. Like I'm a 12-step guy. I go to 12-step meetings. I do the 12-step thing. Sometimes that's for people, sometimes it's not. And then having mentors in my life who, even when I can't call them, they're voices in my head. Uh, I'm a big fan of habits. Get up in the morning, I go to the gym. Okay, when I'm done at the gym, I make my breakfast, I shower, and then I pray, I meditate. I read a spiritual book. Sometimes it's the Bible, sometimes it's, one of the Toltec family traditions. Sometimes it might be another personal development book, but just something that's doing consistently, uh, and being grateful for that journey. I wish that it was like, oh, an aha moment, but I think collectively doing those things is what one has I've been able to manage, not like going back to past behavior and being able to break through, but also to get to the other side and seeing the significant in that. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And it is those actions. This is, it's interesting because it's the same principle that would go with anything, whether someone wants to take their life to another level and improve. It's the same thing, being present to your life, doing the right actions at the right time, letting go and stopping the actions that are not helping. So I like this, that um, you're giving us a perspective that can be really uncomfortable to talk about, and that your focus is on that resilience piece and the transformation that's required, and that it comes from the inside out, right? This is what it is. No one can do it for us. No one can take the place and try to do it for us. And what's interesting is so many others try to lead someone else to do that, but ultimately the individuals have to do it themselves and lead themselves first. And I think with you doing the second option now and really stepping into supporting and empowering and showing a level of resilience and transformation that is possible is really valuable in the world. And I honor you, and I really appreciate just at a whole new level, what you're doing and what you're up to. What would you say in terms of, because the truth is you're also a leader. I mean, you really are, you're out there leading and influencing, and you're doing things with the podcast world. What would you have in terms of advice to leaders who up and coming as well, that need to and want to lead stronger, longer?
Yeah, invest in yourself. Um, Make sure you're taking care of you. You can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. And get to know the people that you're leading and find out what they care about, even the little things. Uh, I used to have a leader in my life that I wouldn't see him very often, maybe once every 6 months. And like I'd be like, oh, I'm going to Vegas or I'm going on a vacation or like it was my niece's birthday or whatever. Like little things that we say, like just passing by in conversation. And every time that I saw him or I talked to him over the phone, the last thing, and it was like months in between. It wasn't like the next day. He would be like, hey, Robert, how was your vacation? Like, how was Utah? Did you go to that museum that you wanted to? And I'm like, you have 1,000 employees and you remember that small detail? Like, I, I think that stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, leading by example, like you can't talk the talk, but then you don't walk it. And people, they see that. Um, they see that. So I think lead with your heart and not with your fist. People are more receptive to that. If I know that you care, but you're a dick in the moment, then like that works for me. But if you just want to be a dick to be a dick, then sorry. Um, yeah, invest in yourself, care about your people, and just try and be a decent person.
That's very wise advice. Very wise advice. Can you recommend maybe a go-to book, or your which ones have been a major impact for you and how you?
Yeah, yeah. Any of the Toltec family traditions by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., Don Jose Ruiz, any of those. I love the Mastery of Love. I love the Four Agreements. Um, I got to interview the brothers a few years ago, and like that was like a super like full circle moment for me. So that was pretty cool. The Lewis House podcast. Um, Man, there's so many, but yeah, my go-to is anything of the Toltec family traditions.
Awesome. Okay. I'm right there with you. I really appreciate those as well. So thank you. I really appreciate you being here and sharing. As we wrap up, is there a way that folks can get a hold of you and maybe even learn more about Second Option?
Yeah, you can just email me directly at robert@secondoption.org. Website is being rebuilt as we speak, so don't go there or you're going to be really confused. But maybe by the time this is released, that will change. And then my Instagram, Robert C. DeLude. Uh, yeah, I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I appreciate just how you show up and how you've been in my world since day one of being, just talk about leading authentically and genuinely being kind and interested in what I'm doing and how I'm doing. And it definitely goes a long way. And I think that if we can just have that, take some of these nuggets, folks, from what Robert has shared and apply them in whatever way they resonate. It's so helpful. I appreciate what you do so much. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode of Lead Stronger, Longer.